Good evening, beautiful people. I'm glad you're here. Welcome to another episode of HollerCast. We're super duper excited. We've got an awesome guest here today. Been looking real forward to this one, haven't you, Josh?
Oh, yeah, I have been. I'm ecstatic.
I know, right?
Yeah, I messaged you the first time. God, it's been forever ago. And even before we started this, just to get you on my little stupid podcast where I made fart jokes, basically. But I don't know what I was thinking. But, man, we're really honored to have you here.
Yes.
Glad to be here.
We really
Thank you.
Ralph Hise, welcome.
Ralph. Hey.
Senator Ralph Hise.
Senator Ralph.
Yes.
The distinguished Ralph Hise. But anyway, let's take a minute to thank our sponsors before we get started.
Yep.
This episode of HollerCast is brought to you by Big Al's Pack and Ship. Located off Roan Road in downtown Spruce Pine, right next to Webb Funeral Home, Big Al's is your full-service shipping solution, shipping out UPS, FedEx, as well as DHL. In addition to shipping services, Big Al also offers copy and fax support, notary public services, and is Spruce Pine's go-to source for U-Haul truck and trailer rental. If you're looking to ship out a package, mention promo code HollerCast at checkout to receive 5% off. Again, that's promo code HollerCast to receive 5% off shipping services. Big Al's Pack and Ship. Make ship happen. This episode of HollerCast is sponsored by Moondust Lounge, Spruce Pine's only dedicated bar room and live music venue. Located at 116 Oak Avenue downtown, Moondust Lounge offers a variety of fun activities for all ages, including weekly karaoke, dance parties, and live music of all genres. Find Moondust Lounge on Instagram or Facebook for a full listing of the week's activities, and mention promo code HollerCast at the bar for 50% off your first beverage. Again, that's promo code HollerCast at the bar for 50% off your first beverage. Moondust Lounge. Get dusted.
Back. What is up, everybody? How's it going? Oh, Chase.
Yep.
Kick us off, man.
Well, we are ecstatic to have Mr. Ralph Hise here. Like I said, long time coming, man. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, a pleasure for being here.
And Jimmy Henshaw's here, too.
Howdy. I'm back from the
Jimmy's
road.
back.
Many weeks on the road.
Well, Ralph, listen, we just wanted to have you on because I want a general overview of what the heck's going on in North Carolina. It seems like the whole world has gone crazy. Give us some hope.
Well, I guess I have to start off by affirming that the entire world has gone crazy. I said,
I would agree with that.
14 years in the General Assembly, every time in my life I've said that it can't get any crazier than this. I've been proven wrong in this process. Sure. And so, as we talked a little bit about before, I said, even in debating things at the General Assembly, when I've reached a point that I'm debating with people who do not know the difference between a male and a female and a woman, I'm really at a purpose of saying, I don't know that there's this common ground we're going to find between us. Right. Like, we're in completely different worlds now. And so, but you see that coming up in a lot of different issues. And I mean, conflict is always part of politics and those kind of things, but it's creeping in. What you see at the national levels is coming down.
That's what I always say. I feel like it's a slow leach down the ladder from the divisiveness and stuff that you see on the national level. And even in my time period, it's the newer people getting elected and coming into these positions that are elected in that environment. There's a lot of the older Democrats and even the minority leader, Dan Blue, and others. I can sit down anywhere, anytime. We can have long conversations about what's going on, what we do, even when we disagree on things. And, you hear the old stories from legislators about how everybody used to go to dinner together and everything else. Now you even go to the cafeteria, you've got a Republican table and a Democrat table, and House is over here and those kind of things. And with the exception of those few members who've been there for that long, there really is no interactions. It's much more, where can we take our shots, and
That's
who's ultimately going to do that.
Well, I think society as a whole is like that. Because culture's downstream from politics are downstream from culture, and that's where we've been heading for a long time with this divisiveness.
Sure. I mean, you think about it on the national level. When was the last time that we passed a piece of significant bipartisan legislation?
I couldn't tell you.
I think as far as I remember, welfare reform with Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the last
95,
time.
I guess that was. It was.
So we're talking 27 years.
Yeah.
Since we've passed bipartisan. Is it that way in Raleigh?
No, I wouldn't say that it's that far. I mean, we still, after working on it for 8 years, we passed Medicaid expansion this time, which was still a bipartisan bill and others, but there is a lot to get through before you get to actual policy, who's in charge and who's those kind of things that you can still do on the state level. But we're getting more that way. And I also say the federal government never thought it was relevant, but they also took earmarks out of the entire process. And they've not been able to really name a post office since they did that. Not to say that they weren't going crazy and wasting too much money and doing it and everything else.
Sure.
But, sometimes when you're 2 votes away, a bridge might get it done.
Right.
Sure. And now that you don't do those kind of things, the ability, and now we have, in Congress, you have one House Republican, one House Senate. So, it's who can get the best sound bite. I can run my bill and we can pass it in this chamber. Darn well the other chamber's never going to take it up or never going to look at it. But, we're all setting up for the next 2 years or the next 4 years.
And correct me if I'm wrong, both houses in Raleigh are Republican, right?
They are. As a matter of fact, due to House Member Trish Cotham switching from Democrat to Republican a couple months ago now, both the House and Senate have supermajorities. So if 100% of members show up and can vote together, we can override the veto of a governor.
Right. Okay.
I want to touch on something you said just a minute ago about how we live in the two camps live in totally different realities, and there's many ways that we do. One of the more straightforward ways I can think of it is how, like, the role of government. What is the role of government? Camp Red and Camp Blue have diametrically opposing ideas of what the role of government is. They cannot exist. I mean, one side says that we live in a democracy, and the other side says that we live in a constitutional republic. Those two cannot exist in the same country.
Yeah, I think my philosophy, and comes from Benjamin Franklin, we have a republic if we can keep it. Any government that is strong enough and powerful enough to give you what you want, is a quote from one of our founders, is big enough to take everything you have. And so when people don't see government's role as protecting our rights, but then see the government as being some Santa Claus.
Protecting us rather than our rights.
That the things we get come from government. I just tend to view that government is the taker. I mean, and some of that comes from growing up in Mitchell County. When I grew up here, tobacco was the number one industry. Furniture and textiles were the second and third industry. Then you got to kind of healthcare and government services. Well, I saw the federal government come in and buy out the tobacco industry. And they took it away. Then they came out with NAFTA and CAFTA, and they took away furniture. They took away textiles. We watched it disappear. Now they tried to take over health care. You go back to the Obama administration. Now our number one employer, due to the prisons and the school systems and everything else, this region is government. That's what's happened here in this area. Every major industry we've lost in my lifetime comes directly to government.
From policy.
That's what covered in. We lost it to government. We didn't lose it to some better competition. We didn't lose it to those kind of things. We lost it to government policies. So that's where I come from, and my basis of saying I worry about government being the thing that takes away our opportunities in the industries, not the one who provides them. Just because government's now our number one employer doesn't make it our provider.
And I think that is something that has occurred in a lot of rural areas, is that government is also the number one provider. If you look at the number of people on disability or getting government benefits, low income, all that, that is exactly what the repercussion of that is. Once the government takes control of the employment status, the support status follows. Because if they can't employ enough people, they've still got to support them.
Sure.
God, that's crazy. We've talked about that a million times, though.
We have.
I mean, we sit right here. We do this podcast right here. You got, 2 abandoned furniture plants?
Yeah.
Where you could throw a rock in here.
Less than a football field from us.
Well, now you got PRC that's a part of one of them, I think, right?
Are they still operating?
I think so.
Yeah.
PRC still operates.
Okay.
But I watched it. I watched it happen.
I did too.
I remember. I've said this ad nauseum at this point, but I remember watching my friends go from their mom and dad had a good job or whatever, and then all of a sudden NAFTA, CAFTA, boom, gone. And then all of a sudden they go from wearing American Eagle and Abercrombie and hanging out all the time and going to movies with us to where now they're wearing their brothers' hand-me-down shoes, and watched it.
What also happened? I mean, do you think that also contributed to the kind of death of the entrepreneurial spirit of these small towns too? Because you think about like us, back to growing up here, Welburn's, Western Auto, Days Drugs, like the News Center, everything on Upper and Lower Street, Sullivan's Music, basically carry the name of the family that operate the business. So I've always wondered if if you had a couple things going on. One, you had large employers with jobs, so you had discretionary income, so people had places to shop, which opened doors for entrepreneurial efforts. So I'm wondering if there's like this long-term trickle-down effect. It's kind of why we're at with today.
Well, my dad worked at Henry Don 37 years.
Wow.
That's what coming in.
I'd forgotten that.
It got him the privilege of sweeping the floor when they closed the plant, when it went out right before he turned 62. But at one point, when they were running 3 full shifts, there were over 2,400 people working right there in that Henry Don plant.
2,400.
Yeah, that's what coming in a county that was 14,000 to have worked. I mean, when I went to school, I never realized when Welburn's had the sale, whether his was nickel shoe sale or whatever else, you'd show up to school the next day and there'd be 8 guys in my class all wearing the same shirt.
Sure.
That's what coming in, because that's where all of that kind of commerce went back through. And John Wilmer's one of them, took great care of his community.
He did. He did.
There's a lot of people, and it's different. We had a Belk's in downtown Spruce Pine.
We did.
My grandmother retired from there.
Yeah.
Hey, we had a Radio Shack in Spruce Pine. The nerd in me comes out. So
We did.
Henline, Greg Henline, great job.
At
I
one,
was there all the time.
At one point, we had the largest Radio Shack
We
in
did.
the United States.
We did when it moved out to where the U.S. Cellular is now.
cow.
When it moved to the Sky City building, it was the largest per square
Really?
foot.
Yeah.
Yep. Sure was.
So, and I was, you could come up and buy your cassette tapes there, your albums, and
I have
those kind of
many
things.
CD that come from there still.
And some of it has been just a change in the retail environment as
For
a whole.
sure.
Like everything went to the large. We got the Walmart,
Big box stores.
which was huge here. It's made a big difference in income and whatever else. But the world has changed. The
It
small
has.
guy doesn't necessarily able to compete on price and those kind of things. But
Well, and I will tell you this: the big box guys can no longer compete on price because Amazon online shopping. There's a lot of stuff going on. So
it's made a big difference.
Good gosh. Sorry, guys.
come on, Chase, what are you doing over
I'm
here?
sorry.
God,
Echo,
I'm just
echo.
trying to put a post.
ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Amateur Hour at the HollerCast.
Every hour is amateur hour at the HollerCast because I'm producing this craziness.
No, I jest. So Ralph, a couple things. Senator Hise, I don't know how to address you, man, because I've known
Ralph
you forever.
works.
Okay, all right. So, you got a lot on your shoulders, but let's talk about. You mentioned earlier that I just want to talk a little bit about what's going on. We understand the divisiveness. What else is going on in Raleigh? What's your challenge today? What's the
biggest challenge
life ahead look like?
The biggest challenge we've got right now is trying to deal with and spend a surplus in the budget. When we came in this year, I'll start back when I first came in. North Carolina's personal income tax was up to 7.75%. Over the 12 years I've been there, we've got that down to 4.75 and scheduled to go under 4% out by 2030.
Hold on. Can you repeat those numbers again? What did it start at again?
7.75.
What year was that,
the high
roughly?
end, so that'd been 2000. I ran in 2010. We
Okay.
made the first. We cut sales tax in 2011, and we've
Okay.
done income tax ever since.
Wow. So what's made up that shortfall shortfalls? Sorry, that's my day job talking through. What's made up for that revenue? Is it lottery or
Well, now here's the interesting thing is
is you just spending?
there's never been a shortage of revenue every time we've cut taxes in the state.
Interesting. So you
Now,
got
I
better
can-
at managing money?
Well, I can go through and show you all the different estimates we had of how the sky was going to fall from the Democrats every single time we've cut taxes. And just like this year, our revenues came in $3 billion higher than our estimates.
Wow.
When you create the environment for
Wow.
business to thrive and you put out the signal, we've also cut corporate income taxes and others, businesses located in North Carolina.
There was a story that came out this week,
Saw that,
and
yep.
I sent it over to you guys. I mean, North Carolina got rated as one of the number one on the top of a list for businesses to move to right now.
We now have the lowest business income tax of any state that charges one. Is the other thing. We've got that down to 2% now.
Wow.
In that process, and it's grown revenue every year we've done it. When I started in 2011, we had a $2.7 billion shortfall in the budget that the previous General Assembly had raised temporary taxes to try to fill it. We come back a year later, they've spent all that money, and you've still got the shortfall.
So in just over a decade, just to recap, you've gone from 7+ tax and your goal's under 4%.
If the Senate proposal we put out in the budget, which we're negotiating right now, will get us to 2030 by 2.5%.
Wow.
For the personal income tax. But
Let's go.
remember, we're competing with Tennessee, 15 miles across.
For sure.
Yeah.
For
who
sure.
charges a big goose egg. That's what's coming in. So Florida, Texas, all don't have a personal income tax.
For sure. No,
So-
I get that. But when I moved back from Louisville, I moved to Tennessee first, and then mom and dad want to be closer to them, so I eventually ended up back up. Now, it is cheaper in a lot of ways to live in Tennessee.
It is.
Across the board at a governmental level.
So what can we
Lot
do
cheaper.
to abolish the state income tax in North Carolina?
Well, the key to it is the other thing we've done in addition to lowering the tax rate every year that I've been in, we set our internal goals of saying we will not grow the spend of government, by more than inflation plus population growth. So if you sit there and you put a lock on the growth of government, when the economy turns up and performs better than that, you start generating additional revenue to do those things with.
Right. So say that one more time.
You're not thinking the same, but like we got to make sure we hear this.
Yes, say that one more time.
So what we've done is, while we have held spending to only growing at the rate of population growth plus inflation. Now that's a pretty big number this year. Inflation's been up there.
Sure.
But at times, if you're exceeding that, you're exceeding your tax base.
But that's also a measurable platform. I mean, that's something you can measure and understand. That makes it, like, in those terms, most people can understand that.
Right. And if you use those excess revenues you're generating to lower your tax rate, that's what coming in, you can still give inflationary raises to state employees. You can still grow as the population grows, but you're generating this money to accelerate your economy, which generates more money, So a 1-year turn this year is more than 10% of our budget.
Wow.
In additional revenue that just came to the table. And it gives you the opportunity, when you're making choices to spend it, I think as both the House and the Senate are this time, it's important that you can start to spend that on non-recurring expenses.
For sure.
So that's why we'll be able to get a new middle school here in Mitchell County.
Congratulations for that, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Mitchell,
incredible.
But the cost of that, while it may be $40 million, doesn't require another $40 million next year.
Yeah, no, it's a spend.
Next year.
It's a finite spend.
You
it's a
can
project.
start to meet some of those needs that you have by generating this non-recurring revenue, still controlling your spend, still generating recurring excesses to be able to lower your tax rate. That's the path we've been on for 13, 14 years now. As far as the difficulties, I never thought I would see a time that it was easier to cut taxes when you had a deficit than when you have a short, than when you have a surplus.
So this $3 billion, if there's any way to get 1.5% of that for the infrastructure of water and Spruce Pine, let me know how I help to make that happen.
Yeah.
Well, and I said this, and I've talked to people who are running for the office and others. This year was the first year I got a request from Spruce Pine for their water and sewer.
Okay.
And so this is for the water lines in Alda Pass. It is my hope when we finish this budget for this year and next year that we will be earmarking $1 billion each to water and sewer infrastructure. And that we will
for a state fund, and then the people that request can dip into that based on some criteria.
It is my hope that Spruce Pines project will be earmarked in that.
Understood.
More than applying, but we've got to get to that point.
Do you have an idea of just to stick on that for just a second? Do you have how much is, because this, I know this is a big thing in the local election this year, is the water and sewer is terrible. Whatever, we got to fix the water and sewer. It is. We can't be the only ones in that boat, right?
No.
Every time.
It is. This is one of the more common water and sewer infrastructures came about in the 40s and 50s when everyone was, still had a lot of outhouses in North Carolina, and we put in the systems, and a lot went with wells and septic systems, but then that doesn't manage a town, so you started building those and putting them together. That's 70 years.
Sure.
So
That
they're all
infrastructure
coming
is
due.
collapsing.
Yeah.
Look, I was mayor here. We didn't know where our water and sewer lines were.
Right.
No one drew a map when they put the water and
they just
sewer
put it
lines
in.
in the Spruce Pine. They just put it in and connected it.
Yeah.
And the best we had at the time is Elbert kind of remembered where they did
were.
that.
You would think we did that there.
A couple of years ago, and even go into Burnsville, and I know Burnsville's had all this. When they were putting the 4-lane through Burnsville, the same
they hit a
contractor
lot of
made the
stuff.
mistake of getting both the contract for the highway and the contract for the water and sewer replacement.
Ooh.
And there is no map of where anything crossed. And so it's a zigzag all underneath that. And it hit their own line trying to dig up the line they knew that was there. And it became a cost loser for them to pick up that entire project. It is common all across western North Carolina. It's not just the areas we need to reach. It's the areas that we've reached. And someone did it with terracotta pipes, or someone did it with.
Right.
Yeah.
We've got all that. Somebody put our sewer line underneath downtown.
Yeah,
And build all the concrete on top of it.
Yeah.
To say that somehow a current administration or whatever somehow responsible for all that or whatever else.
It's not rational.
Right. It didn't even
It's
happen
not
in their
rational.
lifetime. Now, do they need to put together a plan for replacing those and those kind of things?
Sure.
But I think everybody's got to realize they're putting together a plan for what they still don't know.
Yeah.
It is. When I was mayor, we generally billed for about 30 to 40% of the water we purified and sent out.
Gotcha.
We were losing more than half our water somewhere into the system.
Wow.
That's coming in. But don't forget, I know we get bull advisories all the time
Sure.
and everything else.
Which is common
Right.
in many, many, many counties in your whole jurisdiction.
Spruce Pine's inflow
constituency.
to their water treatment plant, and this may be 10 years old, but is cleaner than 96% of the outflows in North Carolina.
Wow.
So if you go to any plant
It's
and
cleaner
say,
coming in than processed going out at everybody else.
else's. As a matter of fact, they used to have to backfill through the filters to get the turbidity up high enough for the chemicals to react.
Really?
That's what coming in. So you had to use what you filtered out to get the
Again.
water dirty enough to the chemicals to react to
Wow.
be able to come back in. Between Beaver Creek and our wells, we have an incredible water source.
Oh, yeah.
There's no two ways around it. Yes, we've got a piping issue that delivers it all across, and there's problems with it. And every time it freezes, not when it freezes, when it thaws, the ground shifts.
Yeah.
There's another water's out. Everybody in the town's experienced it and dealt with it and those kind of things. But
So what you're saying is we should take the Henry Dunn facility and create a Spruce Pine bottled water company.
it would be incredible. That's what coming in. I think it'd be better than most bottled water that's out there right now.
Well, if somebody wants to help,
There
I
you
can
go.
sell it.
And I just say, if anybody really wants to complain, feel free to come anywhere in Raleigh and turn on a spigot and get a cup of that and see how good it's going for you.
Yeah. Not good.
I would take that challenge almost nationwide because
Yeah.
I'm in cities all over the country every week, and I will tell you, I would rather, and I do constantly, go to some of these streams in the back hollers and drink out of the stream before I drink out of a water fountain in any hotel in America, almost. And that's true.
I'm telling you, it's the truth. And I saw the other thing, just to comment about the water. The South Toe River was rated one of the cleanest
Yeah, I saw that.
streams in
I saw that too.
North Carolina.
I used to, North and South Toe both, but I talked about my dad working at Henry Dunn. He used to tell me all the stories. That river ran white.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It
I
was
saw
pure
it.
milky running. It would freeze to the point that teams of horses could drive across it. Everything else, like even into the 40s and 50s.
Sure.
They were telling no one to get near that water or in that water. And quite frankly, running through the middle of our town now is a trout stream.
I know.
That's what coming in. There's probably no more commercial fish that's more sensitive to bad water than
For
a
sure.
trout stream.
For sure.
That's what coming in. And we have done, over that time period, an incredible job at cleaning up that river.
I agree.
And having it
Yep.
there. Almost nothing lived in it when I was a kid and fished it.
I remember in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I'm 37 years old. In my lifetime, I remember it running
Yeah,
white.
I do too.
Don't you?
Yep, I do.
And you remember all those pictures. They used to have tourism pictures.
Yeah.
That had the river in it, and the river was pure white.
So I grew up at Deer Park. In between Deer Park and Penland, there's this little area of rock formation we call the bathtub. And I have photos of us daring each other to swim in the white water, laying in a rock foundation where the water is just solid white. Looks like you're taking a bath in milk.
What was that?
That's what happened to
what
me.
was
so-
that, Josh? Is that fluorides in the river?
I have no clue.
No,
No,
what I
don't
was
think so.
told, it
Yeah.
was no, it just one of their silt ponds busted, and it was literally just full of all the white sand. That's literally
So it just-
it's
it's probably
sediment more than
sediment,
anything
yeah.
else.
Feldspar.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it was probably feldspar.
It would really, I didn't ever. Well, maybe that's why I twitch all the time. I don't know, but no, I nothing ever happened to me.
Right.
And I'm not
just
saying
dark.
that we don't do everything we can to protect the river and to
Sure.
clean up the
Oh,
riverbed.
absolutely.
There's
and
always
everything
room for
else.
improvement.
But I think it's kind of missing the point to say that somehow in this modern time we've polluted it. When you look back a generation or two generations and see what we came from and what we've actually done to clean that up.
There's a lot of progress.
Yeah,
We
we've
have
made
done
lot
a
of
great
progress.
deal nationwide since
Yeah.
like the 70s. Our carbon emissions nationwide are down like 200% or something. I mean, it's ridiculous.
So
You know.
back up to this request from Spruce Pine for funds. As this is potentially, I understand it's not here, but it's potentially available. Should these people, the officials coming in or whoever's there now, should they start getting a plan now for that? How does that work?
Absolutely. I think one of the challenges that we have created by putting so much in water and sewer, not that there's not a need for it, but you had the federal infrastructure money that came down last year, and now we put about $2 billion in over the last 2 years. We're looking to put another $2 billion. We have created our own inflation. That's what's coming in. Like
Got
the
it.
state
Got
coming out and putting our entire budget was $28 billion. When you talk about the state putting an additional $2 billion into water and sewer investments, plus the feds putting $6 billion into the system, like you can go to an engineer for water and sewer, and it's going to take a lot longer than you anticipated.
Sure.
And the particular project they've asked for in this area is actually one that got a grant funding from Golden Leaf for, and the cost to do the project doubled on them.
Wow.
That's what coming in. So when they had the money to do it, now they've got half the money to do it. And so this is kind of in backfilling. But that's going to level itself out.
Okay.
You're going to
Okay.
see more industries and more companies coming into the water sewer business. If this kind of money's available, excuse me, and the companies can't fulfill it, I know companies around here that are getting into, they're going to start working more in digging pipe and those kind of things than what they've done. So the more you can prepare for that, the more you can have a replacement plan and be able to talk about your distribution system of water and sewer and others and what improvements you may need for those. I mean, our plant also 12 years ago ran well below capacity. We had to connect the high school to the sewer system to be able just to get it up
It's
to the
capacity to make that.
And if anybody remembers, until what was that, 8 years ago, the high school ran on its own little processing
It did,
plant.
had its own
which-
facility.
So bad. I remember that.
Oh, we used to do marching band right beside the cesspool.
Right, which
Loved
literally was just this open tank that kind of churned everything. Now we're processing that out in Spruce Pine, but it's expensive to dig through rock. And this
Sure.
is what I have to convince everybody down east. They dig through sand.
Right.
We don't have that problem.
No.
They don't change elevation between their water treatment plant and their others. We could move 1,500 feet.
Yeah, more than one time. You
Right.
might go up and down and around. Yeah, for
That's
sure.
what coming in. So it's a much more expensive proposition in Western North Carolina to expand those. So our focus, and I say this statewide, in Western North Carolina is much more about improving individual systems. Whereas in Eastern North Carolina, it's much more about connecting systems.
Got
It's
it.
ma-
Here
you
you're
know,
building them from scratch. a
The
lot of
cost to
times. Or
run
rebuilding.
to connect Bakersville and Spruce Pine's water system would probably be more than building Bakersville a water system. That's
I can see that.
because you're digging
No,
through that much rock and those kind of things. So we've made some investments. We've got some $2 million, I think, went last year to Bakersville to improve their water system. And others. So we've been making some of those investments, but anytime I didn't know in December that this new money was going to be available. And so when it hits, if we get a budget by August or whatever else, that's the time we have to have spent it all. And this is true for all legislators. And so the towns that are prepared with a plan and an ask, when those kind of things occur, can be higher on the list
Got it.
than the towns who are asking for planning money.
Right.
That's what coming in. I've got another one in my district that's a huge priority with water and sewer. If some of you may have heard in Canton, Evergreen closed.
Right.
Well, the town of Canton didn't have a water and sewer system.
It belonged to Evergreen.
It belonged to Evergreen, to the plant. Now, you want to talk about getting caught in a system. They've agreed to keep it running for 2 years after they've closed. It takes 3 years to get a new plant permitted through DEQ.
And
that's
another year or two to build it.
Right. And that's the numbers they're giving me from DEQ trying to get it done themselves.
Good grief.
Not the normal operation. So your environmental planning and everything else. So now we're trying to figure out how to make emergency operations for 2 years from now when they run out of water and sewer.
Wow.
And that's
so
a $40 million.
Canton's going to smell for a different reason.
Yeah.
And so,
Bless their hearts.
you know,
over there.
I say other towns have had other issues with water and sewer and others. I'm dealing with towns in Avery County that no longer have a water source, that they're already pulling too much from their water source, and DEQ's.
Now, is that because of development?
It is some of their growth.
Okay.
But even at the original footprint of the town, they would have been
They
pulling more
got it.
water than
Right, gotcha.
that was coming out. But I've got the 9 counties I represent. I've got water and sewer requests in probably every county I've got, towns and municipalities.
That's good. I mean, it's positive to hear it's not just us. It's challenging that it's so many, but like you said, it's a 70-year-old system. It's collapsing statewide.
So, just in terms of just practicality, would the town need to hire a consultant to put together a plan for a comprehensive fix of that system? What do other towns do?
So that is an older method that people would use, that have somebody come in, that
Right.
pay to do a plan. The others, most municipalities are being much more successful right now with establishing what are public-private partnerships. And that is coming in with an industry, whether it wants to run the water. We have a private company that runs it. Used to be American Water. I think that's sold to someone else.
Oh, I see. A private company comes in with a revenue stream in their mind, and they do a lease or some sort of profit-sharing program with the town.
And it can bypass a lot of issues with kind of doing that, because the problem is, you come in, you bring somebody in, you pay the full amount for doing a plan. They have no responsibility for where the plan doesn't work.
Sure.
They just delivered the plan. Then you let it sit for a while, and the regulations change 3 times between the feds and the state and environmental quality and others. So now, as soon as your plan's written, it's paid for, but now it's out of date.
Yeah.
That's what coming in. Now you've got another contractor who comes in to build it, and they get the change orders. That's what coming in, and everything else, and run your cost out, and the regulations to have to do it. It just, a lot of things are working much more efficiently to try to enter into those partnerships.
So if you privatize that, with what's the risk there? I mean, what if these companies go out of business? Does the town have an option to buy out? I mean, what does that look like?
Well, and moreover on that,
collapse?
just to
Go ahead.
glom onto that, if we were to do that, I know that you said yourself that we have an incredible water source. Does that mean that, and which is an incredible opportunity for the town for expansion and everything else like we've already got? How does a partnership like that affect that?
Well, the entire payback on the concept is based on the sale of water and sewer.
So you share common interests,
Right.
Yeah.
So if it's within capacity, and if it's cost effective to expand the capacity, then they'll
do the math
will
of what's in it for them
Right.
over a 20-year, 30-year term.
That's
whatever.
what, I mean, the downside to it is that you lose some of the abilities to keep your water rates low.
So they effectively
right.
control the rate.
So the question becomes down to, and sometimes this is some of the things Spruce probably want to ask. While we have challenges in our water and sewer system, we also have one of the lowest water and sewer rates in the state.
Well,
And
devil's
incredible
advocate.
water.
And incredible water.
Devil's advocate here. What if, or would it be possible that if a town entered into agreement with these private people, we've got great water. What if the deal was those people also build a water processing place, just like the town has ABC that can sell alcohol? Could we not build and sell water as a town, as a business also?
Yeah. And I actually know some people that have had those conversations about our water system and others. Probably not surprising to anybody. The water market is controlled kind of like the soda market
Oh,
is.
absolutely, by the same people.
And so in some ways that's kind of like saying we're going to bottle and sell a new Coke
Yeah, but see,
or a new Pepsi.
Right.
but that's where you just enter in distribution deals with those majors. You become a supplier to feed them, right? You get them to take their success, and you're just a new source of them. Just like you don't beat the beast, you just become the new Coke that they're selling. You're just the one making it.
And there's other things to do too. If you go down the mountain, there is one reason that Baxter's is at the bottom of the mountain.
It's where the water runs.
It's the water.
Yeah.
That's what coming in.
For sure.
They cannot move Baxter's anywhere in the world
They tried.
because
failed.
there is nowhere that they can get that quality of water at that amount of availability to produce that many saline bags at the cost they're getting it for on their own aquifers. And
My understanding, and I don't know their financials, but this is my understanding, that has to be one of their highest margin facilities in all their business entities.
so my point in saying that is there are other things that could be done with our water system as well that may not be drinkable or bottable, but
They're usable.
are usable.
Yeah, I always look, and you'll be familiar with this term, but self-funding projects are my favorite. If you can create something to be self-funding.
Yeah.
Too, man.
So when I start thinking about like ways that local government could be effective, is to be more creative about not just solving the problem of water infrastructure, but if we've got these great resources, how do we monetize it? And how do we monetize it? Obviously with a preservation plan and not mowing all the trees and mountains down to do it, for sure. But we've got a lot of resources here at our disposal that, just like you said, don't exist anywhere in the world. And I just believe that there's got to be ways. And I keep hearing this $3 billion surplus, and I just wish that I had it, like we had plans at the town ready for these things to happen. For just ask for discretionary dollars, whether it's a community advancement fund or a preservation fund or something to help drive development here in a positive, sustainable fashion.
Just one other question: do you have other towns in your district that supply water at outside rates like ours do at the quant? Because it seems like we do a lot of that here.
Yeah. There is more issues associated with water rates and others that come up. One of them is the rate they charge at outside versus inside. There actually is an actuarial formula for determining that.
I'm sure. That makes sense.
The complicated process is that municipalities, and whether it's Spruce Pine or anyone else that have a water system, in order to apply for water systems, you have to ask for voluntary annexation into the city limits. Now, a town has zero obligation to provide water outside of its boundaries. A town has a boundary by state law, and if you have a property in that, they are required by law within 1 year to be able to provide to the property line of the property. If you are outside the city limits, it's a choice. They can sit down, how much are we going to make off of this? How long is it going to take to run a line from here to there? And is it worth it? And I think that's what most do. Although there's other reasons that people want in the city limits, and it may not just be water, beer and alcohol sales.
Sure.
Those kind of things.
Also, police, fire, all those things being close.
The other one that's huge is insurance rates. And that also depends your distance from the fire department. So there is this risk that if a town took a new property in and the fire department couldn't respond there in the same 6-minute or whatever increment, it could raise the property insurance rates of everyone in the city limits because the new town fire district wouldn't have the same rating.
And or the town will have to build a new fire station to accommodate
or they'd have to do those kind of things. So there's a lot of considerations, but a lot of towns use this to annex everything in the world. This is how they grow their footprint. This is how others, and that creates its own controversy. You get into big cities and they don't want this development here that comes outside, so they turn them down. Or we're even dealing with it with charter schools. Like municipalities, because they don't want a charter school to compete with other schools, they'll turn down their water and sewer permits or their zoning permits. That's what coming in. And so we're working on a bill right now that's got some back and forth to exempt public charter schools.
Wow.
From zoning so that they can't be held out by municipalities. So all these games come into local politics.
Right.
That's what coming in. But in general, Spruce Pine's making those kind of cost decisions. Like,
Right.
for this, is it worth running to this piece of property? I remember when the BP used to be out on Penland, as soon as Spruce Pine, passed out beer and wine sales, they asked to be annexed
Included,
into the town.
Sure.
Running a water line that entire distance down Chalk Mountain was never going to be feasible
Right.
For the town of Spruce Pine.
Right.
Wow.
And it's coming in. So they were turned down. But running to a Walmart is worth it
Right.
because of the property tax you get on that
So-
base more than its water.
What about like Swiss Pine Lake?
Yeah. See, here's what. Okay, we've had this discussion 1,000 times too. So, my whole point has always been: do you say you're from Spruce, or do you say you're from Grassy Creek, or do you say you're from Spruce Pine?
I understand.
Do you say you're from,
Penland
Swiss
Road,
Pine? Yeah.
Esseto, whatever.
You're from Spruce Pine. How do we get like, in my view, this is my view, and now that I'm out of this whole thing, I can talk about it. In my view, it seems to me that Spruce Pine has a revenue problem, specifically a property tax revenue problem. It seems to me that anything that you look at that looks like a dump usually is in the city. Anything that looks like it's halfway decent, with the exception of some things, it's probably not in the city. How do towns responsibly grow? And the other thing I want to talk about is annexation. We were able to annex Walmart back in the day, even though the property lines were not contiguous. That changed at some point while you were in office, right?
So what happened is that towns there's a lot that are exempt, that are subject to satellite annexation rules, cannot have a satellite annexation more than 10% of their square footage or square mileage for the town. So Walmart, that large property, took the town over that limit or to that limit. That's what coming in. So now, without specific exemptions, they couldn't pick another large satellite unless they made it contiguous. So, and there's ways they could do that as well, kind of run down the road, the width of the state highway, then come back in. It's a nightmare when I do redistricting, trust me, across this state, trying to get it in, but there may be some ways around it, but that's a real challenge. And then you've got business owners and properties like Swiss Pine Lake who paid for their infrastructure, and the town didn't come in and pay and build their infrastructure.
Right.
And now they're going to be quite upset when you go take them over and then bill them for their infrastructure, for their water and sewer. But when you go out, the same businesses headed out there. When you look at the shopping centers who put in their own water and sewer to connect to the system, and now they're going to have to pay the additional property tax rates when they got none of the benefit of setting those.
Well, how do you make that up to them? How does that work? Because we can't be the only ones that deal with this problem, right?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways. Insurance costs will be the top of the list.
Right.
The lower property tax rates you have, the better the calculation is for them for coming in to the city limits. And then for residents, it's really a matter of value, other than their home insurance rates and those kind of things. And, I moved into the town, 17 years ago when I moved into English Woods. I have a better feel about the property taxes I pay to the town and that than I do other taxes that I pay. I see the value coming back from it.
Right.
When when we've had over those years, when something's happened at the house or others, we've had to call town police. Are there in no time.
Yep.
That's what we did. And so sheriff could be a long way off.
Sure.
In Mitchell County before they get there.
Sure.
And some of that's a conversation back and forth with the county. So as being a resident of a town of Spruce Pine, I'm still paying county taxes for the sheriff's deputy.
That you never see.
But they don't patrol my street because the town does.
Right.
And so there's some of that balance back and forth for all municipalities and counties, because state government doesn't view like counties above municipalities in government. Counties and municipalities are both subdivisions of the state. They're not. They're not this kind of back and forth. One reports to the other.
Right.
A town is independent from its county, and a county is independent from its towns. Except for Charlotte-Mecklenburg, that's a whole different statute.
Whole different deal. I got you.
Do we have an idea of what the tax revenue difference would be if we adopted a model like Tennessee or Florida, where we had a higher sales tax and no state income tax? That way, everybody who is in the state, whether they're a resident or not, pays taxes.
We have had the conversations on the state level for many years of kind of making that jump to an income tax to a sales tax from an income tax. And the biggest challenge we are facing, and it's really a challenge that Tennessee and Florida and others are facing, our economy is shifting. And over 80 years, it's went from an economy based on the sale of goods to services.
Right. Sure. And that's every business.
That's what coming in. So your tax base in goods is actually declining.
Right.
Even though we're very much a consumer state. And your growth is in service industries. That's what coming in. So rather than keep this kind of process that's where we penalize the goods in exchange for the services, we're really trying to get to a point. I think we could do it at about a 7% tax right now if we taxed all goods and services equally and dropped the income tax.
Man, I'd be all
It
for
would
it.
essentially equal out.
Now, that would mean that when you go get your taxes done, there would be 7% on your taxes. When you go get your attorney's fees, there would be 7% on your taxes. When you go get your car worked on, they wouldn't have to figure out which parts are under the tax system and which parts aren't under the tax system. You'd pay a 7% tax across the board. If we did that, we could probably completely eliminate income tax in the state, but probably not have to surprise anybody. Each one of those groups have their own lobbyists.
Oh, sure.
And they have their team of lobbyists.
Yeah.
And every attorney in the world will tell you how the worst thing you could ever do would be to place an income tax or a sales tax on attorney's fees or a doctor's visit or a whatever else. Each one of those, the way the system works is if you're out, you want to stay out. If you're in, you kind of want everybody else in.
Right.
And we don't tax groceries. We don't have a state tax on groceries. There's a 2% grocery tax that goes completely to local governments. And now the one where that weirdness comes in is the counties get to decide if they want to divide that tax on population or on tax base. And so one of the things that Spruce Pine and Bakersville loses out on is that Spruce Pine loses out particularly, is it's based on the tax base of Spruce Pine compared to the tax base of county. They get that percentage of the sales tax. Even though there's many more people, if they did it by population, it would be much more money going to the town.
Sure.
So you change that on a county level?
The county commissioners gets to decide how it's going to do. And so that's always been the case here in Mitchell County, that Spruce Pine's shortchanged by that. I deal with in the legislature the counties who change it every year because it's on the...
It's on like a sliding scale.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this county's property's gone up this year because they did a town reevaluation. So then the county flips them after the budget year starts to those and takes the money away and those kind of things. Those are the ones that tend to lead towards conflicts at the General Assembly.
Right.
Good thing about West North Carolina, we are generally very consistent in those things. If it's been that way, it's been that way since our grandparents started.
Yeah, gotcha.
So Chase, I'm just surprised you've not asked if just cannabis sales could eliminate the tax deficit alone.
Yeah.
Could they?
What do you think about that?
If they just did like ABC with alcohol.
Well, I get to 2 points on that. First of all, a lot of the revenue in states like Colorado and others hasn't been the amount of revenue that they anticipated it to be.
It's not, and they've also destroyed those cities. I will tell you, Denver is one of the worst cities in America now.
However, selling it like alcohol is unique. Alcohol is the only item where permission to sell it and regulate it by the state is given by the U.S. Constitution.
That's right.
Nothing else works that way, because we as a country said we will not sell alcohol anywhere in our country. We amended our Constitution to ban it. And then we came back and amended our Constitution
What the states figured out.
to give to the states the right to control it.
Yep.
It is not subject to interstate commerce, to any of those lawsuits. It's why we can say you can't sell here, you can sell there. You can't do that with any other product. Like we couldn't suddenly start doing that with cigarettes, or you couldn't start do that with marijuana because some other state would sue. You were in unfair competition with them. They'd come up with an interstate. So it is, the ABC model is specific to alcohol, and it's only because we have this whole section of law that says this is just alcohol, and we don't have the authority to write those laws because it's the only thing not given from the state to the federal government. It's given from the federal government to the state in that kind of constitutional process. There are some conversations right now starting with medicinal marijuana usage and having licensees and how to grow it. The Cherokee tribe
Yeah, I heard about
is
this.
now
Yep.
growing. I think the tribe, which is both an independent nation and within the state and all these other kind of things, I think they've approved it for medical use. They could approve it for recreational use, but only on the Koala boundary. There may be a place in Charlotte where the Catawbas could do it now, you know, particularly at their casino. If the Lumbees ever got recognized, that may be something down east. But outside of those areas, the legislature's trying to pass a bill to deal with medical marijuana, which is something while I have challenges with. Look, I had a mother, my family member, who fought cancer and went with high dose Oxycontins every 8 hours. That's what coming in. And of every negative thing I may think about marijuana and its usage, I have a much bigger problem with the Oxycontins and what I saw it do to someone and those kind of things in a regulated system. And it was our drug problem. When I was mayor, pills were 90% of our arrests. I know that environment has changed with the introductions of heroines and fentanyls and all those kind of things. But back then, it was all a pill problem.
You know, just a quick segue. Your mom, one of my favorite people in the world. Man. Shirley is hands down responsible for who I am as a human being today, for sure. And I will tell you, I was student body president in high school, and the only reason why is because your mom told me to run. She said because people need to be shook up. So I love your mama.
I remember your mom with, I don't know. I had a unique, she retired the year right before I was going to have her.
Yeah.
And the teacher that we had, her mother ended up getting sick. And your mom stepped back in for about half the year. So I was one of the last students to come through. And man, I think the world of her. I really do. And I see a lot of the same passion that you saw in her and you, Ralph.
You're so right. It's so uncanny sometimes. I mean, I'm sitting here, it's like I see these moments. And we used to get in some healthy debates, your mother and I. It was a very fun fact. So many years ago, Ralph and I were in summer school at the same time. Ralph was a studious young man going to summer school to get ahead. I was a challenging student who was there for different reasons. But we were there at the same time. But I was very challenging. But your mother, I think she liked the debates. I think she liked the fire.
Yeah. She did, and we had a lot of them. Particularly in my late teenage years. That's what coming in. But, and I say this, but her real story is, I mean, when you talk about the rural areas of Western North Carolina, she grew up in Beulah-Dean.
Yes, sir.
Like, it was 1988 before my grandparents had indoor plumbing.
Wow.
True story.
That's what coming in. So I was 12. When I would go and, you'd walk to the outhouse, you took a bath in a little tub you filled with hot water on a wood stove. My grandmother had amazing stories about how she started a school lunchroom that didn't have electricity.
Wow.
That's what coming in on a barter system.
Oh, yeah.
My mom went to college because Warren Wilson College offered a rural exchange program where they would take a kid from rural areas of Western North Carolina, pair them with an international student that's coming in. And not only did she go through that program, get her degree, and started first year as a social worker, but then came back and taught in these high schools. And I will say that, finding someone who wanted to better people from this area and this region, and of everything my mom would ever get just tore all to pieces about, you start putting down or making fun of the people from Western North Carolina or this rural Appalachian thing, and she was getting ready to eat their lunch, and she did that on some big stages.
He's being kind. Whip their ass is the right terminology. I will say it for you. I will say it for what it was. I was terrified of her. But when you write your book someday, which I know you will, you should definitely include that story because, and your mom had a million of them, but man, like your whole family story is really just super interesting.
And she still has Chamber still runs a scholarship every year to find people here who, students that are, excelling and achieving, but haven't had those opportunities to go to 4-year institutions. And so we're still funding that each year. And so,
your mom was a big inspiration for me. I think she was one of, there were a few teachers, for sure. She was not the only one, but when you were around her, you were like, wow, this lady's intelligent. And she is.
And dude, like on fire with energy.
Yes. Yeah. And she had so much passion for what she did. She was one of those teachers that made you as a student want to be a better student.
Right. And afraid not to be.
Yeah.
I can still hear her laugh. Like every day I can just like hear her laugh and see her face is so distinctive. So I won't digress to that anymore, man. But God, man, just
thank you.
You come from great people.
Yeah,
you know that.
Appreciate it.
Well, getting back to the marijuana thing, is there could a state make their own infrastructure to where you could do, because I don't know if a lot of people know this, the liquor store is performing unbelievably well. There's been, I mean, how much? I think it was like they dropped off like a $60,000 check or something like that to the town, and then came back. There was some sort of adjustment that happened, and came back like 2 weeks later and was like, "Oh, here's another $80,000 or something like that."
Wow.
Yeah, I mean that little store out there,
and they're on the verge of paying off the building, so they don't have to pay that. Now all that revenue will come to the table.
Right. So could you feasibly on a state level?
They need to expand the space.
Yeah, they do. Could you feasibly on a state level make something like that for marijuana to where it would be regulated in the same fashion?
So as best I understand the law, and I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one in the legislature, that's coming in, you could control licensees you could have, for example, in the conversations of the medical bureau, they could have 10 licenses available in the state of North Carolina and could go through a process that you would have to cover a region or the entire state as one of those 10 licensees. You would not get into the business of where would they open, what would they sell for, what would they, those kind of things. I mean, ABC, I was mayor when that actually got passed. I survived T-shirt for the alcohol election. Remember, that's the election where we normally have 70 voting for town councils, like a high election number, and we had like 800.
Yeah,
that's what. That
was a big thing around here.
So it was huge. And so it changed a lot. And I remember all the promises on both sides that how the world was going to end and all the all the alcohol problems. And then the other side was promising all the new restaurants we were going to have open and,
Which, I mean, I would argue is kind of true.
Yeah, but they were talking about chains.
Well, that's a different thing. No, but see, that is... Well, we don't get that conversation. That has way less to do with whether you get alcohol or not, more or what is the head count.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
But I think, a lot of good things have come out of it. Actually, one of the things I didn't expect is that DUI arrests actually went down.
Oh, yeah. They're almost non-existent anymore.
I don't know that that's because fewer people are drinking and driving as much as finding DUIs with shooting fish in a barrel beforehand because there was only one place
Yeah.
in the town that sold all the alcohol at the golf course.
sure.
And all you had to do is park across the street and see who crossed the yellow line leaving.
Right.
And you could just,
Yeah.
you could write DUIs all day long.
Right.
Now there's, 40 places across
Right.
there where people are driving and leaving. But
That golf course was a brilliant business move, by the way. Brilliant. I just watched that. I was like, that is smart.
I'm still, I assume I haven't gone to look at it in a little bit, but do they still have the tennis court
The
in the
fence
middle?
is there,
With the-
and the grass-covered pavement is still there. But yes.
And you got to bring your own net
Yeah, because
scale the fence
in the middle of the second fairway
over
or
that,
whatever.
that sketchy pond thing.
Right. Which I don't know that was just to explain that for people that you used to be required to have 2 sports to be a country
right.
club
Right.
to
Right.
sell. And in addition to the golf, they decided to go with tennis. They built this gorgeous tennis court that I'm not sure anyone ever played a game of tennis on in their life, but it was much better than what we even have at the park.
Sure.
In our tennis court,
It was. It
That
was
It
great.
was set there, and they put it right in the middle of the golf course, just to open a single wide trailer, which they upgraded to a double wide trailer
Sell alcohol.
that sold alcohol at bootlegger prices.
Yeah.
And the traffic just flowed
Constant.
all day
Constant.
long, pulling up there. That's coming in, and so and really, by the time the vote came in the town of Spruce Pine, it was really about. Nobody thought you didn't buy alcohol in the town of Spruce Pine. They just had one place to buy it.
Right.
And a lot of your retailers didn't like that fact.
Right. Sure. They had a monopoly.
Top of the hour. Do you need to take a quick break, Josh?
Yeah, let's hear a few words from our sponsors. And our biggest sponsor is HollerCast. Shop HollerCast.com for all of your HollerCast merch needs. We have coffee mugs, tumblers. We have all kinds of stuff. You need to go check it out. And it helps us keep this thing going. But yeah, we're going to hear a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
This episode of HollerCast is brought to you by Big Al's Pack and Ship. Located off Roan Road in downtown Spruce Pine, right next to Webb Funeral Home, Big Al's is your full-service shipping solution, shipping out UPS, FedEx, as well as DHL. In addition to shipping services, Big Al also offers copy and fax support, notary public services, and is Spruce Pine's go-to source for U-Haul truck and trailer rental. If you're looking to ship out a package, mention promo code HollerCast at checkout to receive 5% off. Again, that's promo code HollerCast to receive 5% off shipping services. Big Al's Pack and Ship. Make ship happen. This episode of HollerCast is sponsored by Moondust Lounge, Spruce Pine's only dedicated bar room and live music venue. Located at 116 Oak Avenue downtown, Moondust Lounge offers a variety of fun activities for all ages, including weekly karaoke, dance parties, and live music of all genres. Find Moondust Lounge on Instagram or Facebook for a full listing of the week's activities, and mention promo code HollerCast at the bar for 50% off your first beverage. Again, that's promo code HollerCast at the bar for 50% off your first beverage. Moondust Lounge. Get dusted.
And we're back. I got a question about the marijuana issue we were talking about, going back to that. Well, I had a question, and poof, it's gone. But
You'll remember it.
yeah, I'll remember it. And now to Chase for the weather.
And it's a great way to stay in shape. I've got a couple more questions about that. So, what do you think? What is the general attitude in Raleigh about recreational marijuana? Because you look at states like I think Alabama is moving that direction. I mean, it just kind of surprises me that North Carolina has not.
Well, marijuana legislation is a strange issue. If I thought it were really just about medical uses, particularly for terminal patients,
Right,
for these kind of things, I think that has very broad support.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, state after state, the people pushing medical marijuana, only a small percentage of them are there for the medical concept.
Right.
There is this whole concept of the slippery slope, and the state and all these that have gone to recreational use got there by starting at this, then changing the medical definitions, then getting to the point any doctor could write a prescription for anything you possibly had, to the point that so many people had prescriptions for stomach aches and whatever else. There was no difference in recreational. The recreational has failed to do away with the black market.
Yeah.
Because the promise to everyone was that, well, we will make it legal and we will tax it. Well, as soon as you did that, you made it non-competitive with the black market.
Yeah.
It outpriced it.
Right. And so now I can go to the shop and pay some high price for whatever I'm purchasing, or I can walk around the back of the building and get it for half price that nobody's reporting on the taxes.
Sure.
That's what's coming in. And so there are real concerns about the cost and social implications of recreational marijuana.
And from my 2 cents, I agree with Jimmy. I mean, I've been to Denver. Denver,
It's bad.
Well, I wonder how much of that is due to just their policies in general, rather than.
I will tell you,
correlation isn't causation.
That's true. No,
well,
you're right.
I will tell you, I was there at the start of it, and it definitely was the people who moved there for that reason that may or may not have jobs. It had all of a sudden their homeless number is something like 10-tupled within the first year. So
I wonder if there was other policies that were coincidentally passed.
The things came on after that keep feeding it.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you, when I'm in Denver, I stay out at the airport, which if you've ever been is very far away from downtown Denver.
It is.
Boulder had some issues. They've kind of fixed Boulder now. But I will tell you, Portland, even Boston's starting to struggle. I mean, everywhere it is, it really feels like, and there might be other things, but it usually is tied, from what I have witnessed being there before, during, and after, it's pretty directly tied.
Yeah.
I would be interested to see like some data and what other bills were passed, what other legislation was passed.
I would too. I mean,
is there a state that does it well, you feel like?
I think there are some states that have opened up a medical use on a limited basis who have controlled that well. I would not say that I think there are states that have gone to recreational
that have done it.
Done it well, because let's be honest, most of the time it's come from voter referendums too. And I think even someone who opposes recreational use and others, I have to recognize that as a whole, even in North Carolina, public sentiment has changed. That's what's coming in. I don't think 10 years ago, if you'd have done a survey or you'd have put a ballot out there, that it would have been close.
Right.
Like, that's what's coming in. I've run some surveys statewide. Now I still have a very conservative area of the state that I represent, but statewide approval is in the 70%. That's what's coming in, and a lot of that is those people who went to 69, whatever else in the 60s and the early 70s, are senior citizens now.
Right.
So those kind of things. It's something that's part of the
Right.
culture they grew up with and others, but it's still its own issues. And
Right.
the other thing is that our drug problem has grown so much
Oh my
to
gosh.
where that
Yeah.
the marijuana has become like the insignificant part. The only
Right.
the value of marijuana prosecutions is indifferent. It's a traffic ticket, but the value to law enforcement to be able to search the vehicle
Oh, it's
when
huge.
they detect marijuana on someone, it's not the more marijuana they find that's
it's
so
the guns,
valuable.
it's intent to sell
It's
whatever.
the
Right.
fentanyl and everything
Right,
else.
right.
And in a state where it's completely, although it's technically illegal everywhere still, they steal the same people who sell one tend to be the same people who sell
The other.
the others.
That's true.
becoming-
That's true.
I do think that when you go to legalized states like Colorado, I do think the legal side does a good job of staying out of the other drugs.
Sure.
Right.
Like if you've got a shop, like
You're going to
100%.
mind your P's and
Right.
Q's.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
not gonna lose
that's
the
what
revenue
coming
stream.
in.
Right.
But here it's a mixture, and I would tell you when I'm hearing from law enforcement right now, the people who thought they're buying just marijuana, and that's what coming in,
Yeah,
and
right.
the fentanyl that's added to that.
Oh yeah, it's killing people.
That's what coming in, and suddenly it's starting, and it's apparently not as much on people who are rolling joints or smoking
Right.
marijuana as it is individuals who are baked goods and
edibles.
edibles and
yeah.
those kind of
Vapes,
things.
yeah.
The fentanyl being part of that is just a real risk. And how am I teaching my kids at 15 that I don't know that you could take a sucker from anyone anymore?
No, I agree with
That's
that.
what coming in. Don't go eating
Well-
gummy bears from somebody's bag.
you used to be able to do a little toot, and it was fun. Now you'll just die of a fentanyl overdose.
It's funny. Sorry, just to be
No, you're
step
good,
on you.
you're good.
I've never used marijuana in my life. It's not my thing. I've never used any drugs. I've been around tons of it, playing in metal bands all these years. I'm totally against it. That's me. And I've got a lot of friends that are totally for it. And look, it's not up to me, obviously, to decide. And I've gone back and forth through all the debates with myself over the years, just like you talked about the recreational piece. If you look at this the medical piece, if you look at this versus Oxycontin, well, that's a no-brainer. It
Oh,
really
sure.
is. Even for me, and I've tempered myself a lot over the years. But back in my youth, I was one of those straight edge guys. No caffeine, no nothing. I just high on life, Jimmy Henshaw. But whatever. But it's never been my thing. But I will tell you, I know, just like you said, 10 years ago there was a lot more people in my camp. I'm definitely in the minority. It's shifted a great deal.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm more interested in is the revenue impact, and from what I've seen, it just seems to be a wash. It's not like you really all of a sudden see this huge influx of revenue. My curiosity is, let's say the feds approve this. Let's say it's a national thing. Then could we get back to the days where North Carolina could be a production state and export, just like we get back to tobacco days, like you started
Right.
the
That's
conversation
exactly
earlier.
what I was going to ask.
Can we become
next.
then that's a whole different animal.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I wish we would just stop hiding behind the medicinal facade, because the end goal, I feel like, pretty much for everybody who's pro marijuana is recreational use.
Sure.
I just
It's
wish we could
really
do away with
own it like beer. I love to
Right.
have my beer. I
Right.
love to have a bourbon. That is my thing. I realize it's not any different.
Yeah.
I get that, but it's just it is what it is.
And I don't smoke at all, but man, could you imagine the munchie food industry would just go wild? Like pickles would sell through the roof.
Yeah.
I do think it's important to note that the medical marijuana is used as a stepping stone in the process,
Right.
Because it has the broadest public support.
Sure.
Sure.
So we want to step to this, to try to change, to
That
step
makes
to
sense.
that.
That
to
makes sense.
Step to the others. The other challenge with marijuana is there is no regulation of the use.
Right.
Like there's no way to determine. Somebody can't smoke 2 tokes off a joint and still be okay to go drive their vehicle someone could drink a beer and still be fine to go drive a vehicle.
Right.
Like there's no. At what point is someone in Colorado's dealing with this, and all of them are dealing with this?
They are.
At what point is someone inebriated and driving a vehicle when there's not?
There's not.
It's
a
not
clear,
your blood alcohol
yeah,
level.
you can't take a test.
We use a munchie test, and if they don't eat the pickle ends,
Yeah, you
they're
dangle
too high
like
to drive.
Yeah.
Do you like pickle ends?
Yeah, I do like
I do. I like pickle ends, but so I guess I'm screwed.
You offer them a bag of Funyuns, and if they take it, you're like, yeah, you're coming with us, pal.
Ralph's like, what have I gotten myself into?
It will probably have to get to a place where you use it as a cause. If there is an accident and then you test, you've got any of the system, then you get a charge just like any additional charge.
And,
it's causality.
I would hope that anyone using marijuana would not get in a vehicle.
All of us do.
Right.
But that's just not the
feasible.
reality.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
it's just
coming
like
in.
alcohol. People drink and drive. People are going to smoke and drive, and there's no amount. Unfortunately, there's no amount of legislation or law that's going to stop the people from doing that. That's going to do it. We just have to catch them up at the
Yeah, if we could stop from doing that, we could stop from texting and driving.
Absolutely.
The other one we're dealing with right now that you brought it up with texting and driving. I didn't know until this year that the law is written. It is specifically applying to texting. You can be shopping on your phone.
Oh my gosh!
And that's not surfing the web, anything else.
Wow.
Watching Netflix on your screen.
Watching Netflix, everything else.
Really?
That's not the violation.
I will tell you.
It is sending a text message back and forth. And we're trying to work with the insurance industry
Needs to be
and
distracted
others.
driving.
What is a distracted driving, which makes more sense. But, and now the technology's integrated in vehicles. And so what if I tell my car to send a text? Can the officer tell the difference when he pulls my phone and it says, and is it, quite frankly, any less distracting? But that's one of the ones we're really trying to swirl around that I didn't know till this session, that texting and driving is specifically to texting another individual.
And the burden of proof is on the state. So, I mean, I guess they would have to pull phone records to see if they were, in fact, texting at that.
But he's got a valid point. What if you're doing voice to text?
Right.
And is that carved
all the
out
time.
from physically texting versus voice to text?
Right.
Dude,
That's what I do.
I look schizophrenic because I'm composing emails. I'm
I
going
do
down
too.
the highway talking to everything.
Yeah.
All
and
that.
I just, unfortunately with me, but neither Surrey nor Alexis speak Southern, or at least not my mountain
no.
version.
About it.
That's what coming in. And
I compose everything. I've got this app that I take that does. I compose everything in notes in this notes app I've got, so I can then curate it to take what Siri thinks. I don't know why Siri thinks that every time that I'm saying a good day, everybody, that I'm ordering potatoes for somebody. I mean, like, I don't even
Potato,
understand.
everybody.
Yeah, I don't know where it gets that.
I've caught myself, like, using my phone, sending voice messages, audio messages, and saying full stop, LOL, exclamation point, all the time. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me?
Dude, I just get so I refuse to, and I apologize in advance. I refuse to go back and edit anything. You got to figure out what I'm saying.
Just read between the lines. I do that
And
all
if you
the
don't, ask me for clarity. If you can't figure it out, you may not be a friend of mine. I'm just saying. I ain't got time.
Well, Ralph, so what about sports betting?
so
Where are we
sports-
at on that?
So sports betting has passed the General Assembly. That's what coming in. The governor came down and signed a law in Charlotte. That's what coming in. North Carolina will now be a allowable sports betting facility. Again, it's not. I think it's a great industry or whatever else, but sports betting was a VPN away from everybody sports betting anyway.
Right.
That's what coming in. I don't really buy the argument of we just need the revenue off of it. It's just, not to stay business. The questions are going to be like around the Panther Stadium, whatever it's called now, Bank of America or whatever else.
Yeah.
There will also be some facilities set up to institute it. Right now, the big controversy over that actually had to do, shockingly in North Carolina, had to do with college athletics. And
Sure.
You know, those are coming in like the Carolina Duke game. Nobody ever bet on that.
Right.
That's what coming. But there are some challenges too with individuals. I think we just saw somebody in Auburn betting on to the point of a single swing in a game, and some other coach was betting on it because they had some insight, and AI was actually able to pick up on that.
Yeah, it's incredible what they can pick up on stuff. You know, especially so. Just to be clear, does the sports betting that includes the apps as well, like FanDuel and
Yes.
DraftKings or whatever? Yeah,
and it's similar thing. It has to go through certain brokers.
right.
One of the brokers I do believe is the Cherokee Tribe.
Right.
Or maybe the Cherokee Tribe, but it may be something they have to apply for.
Right, sure.
That's what coming in. But yes, I think you'll see all the FanDuels and those kind of things come in to the state. But they advertise on the market pretty heavily anyway because they buy the national market.
Right, exactly. You know, I don't know if any of y'all ever done any of the sports betting apps or anything.
No.
You know that? If you've never done it, it's pretty cool the way they do it. There's a lot of safeguards in those type of things. So you can't just download the app and then make a $500 bet on a game.
Oh, you can't.
You can't do that. No, you have to show a track record of consistency. So let's say you are a $5 a game bettor, and you $5, $10, maybe $15, maybe $1 on this. Well, if you try to all of a sudden be like, I'm going to put $1,000 on this, it will not let you do it.
Really?
No, you have to show a consistent track record, and it's all done through AI. It's all regulated through AI.
That's not train wrecky enough for me.
I know, right?
Like, go full bore addiction.
So I wasn't sure how I felt about it until I used to go over to every now and then. I'm a sports guy. I watch all your Pat McAfee's and all that type of stuff. Right. And so I got interested, and I was like, I want to go and see what this is all about. So drove over to Tennessee, downloaded FanDuel, did my whole thing. It's really a pretty cool thing, you know. And I don't know how that works on a physical sports betting, you know,
Well, and I
like
said,
at a casino. But,
right.
So we need bookies.
The concept, I get it, but I think the irony the state had before and the hypocrisy the state had before with a lot of gambling is that, yes, we kept out sports betting, but we ran the lottery.
Yeah.
And it's not like the lottery doesn't have an app.
Right.
Sure.
You can go download the lottery, download your bank account.
Sure.
And what we had last night, I guess, $1 billion jackpot that went to California. That's coming in. But it's not like you couldn't walk in and drop $1,000 on a bunch of bouncing balls. That's what coming in that no one's supposedly controlling.
Right.
I would like to take a moment to congratulate the Internal Revenue Service for winning the lottery.
Exactly.
Okay, sorry.
And it lottery is a scam. I mean, the $1 billion prize is, I can't even imagine the guy in California. Right. Like if he took it, I think he's down to 200 and some million.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
The rest of it's government in some way.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I would be, pretty ecstatic to just have 200 million land in my lap. But man, from $1 billion.
As someone told us one time at General Assembly, just realize that if Powerball or Mega Million or any of those games were run in Nevada, they are considered fraud by state law. That's what's coming in.
And the lottery in this state was passed in the most corrupt way imaginable.
Sure.
People landed in federal prison over it, lawmakers.
Yeah.
For even proximity, even the scratch-off games and everything else, like a high-end game in North Carolina pays about 40% of the money paid into it goes to prizes. So if you put $100 in, you should generally return $40.
Right.
Anything under like 93 is fraud in Nevada.
Wow.
That's what's coming in. Like blackjack returns like 97, 98%, depending on your strategies. That's what's coming in and playing the game. Craps is one of the highest returns in the game. Lottery, not even close. That's what's coming in. It's when it gets to gambling, like the odds are horrible.
Oh, yeah.
So let's say that you won the lottery, and I don't know anything, but let's say you won the $1 billion lottery and you were going to donate the entirety. Does it still get taxed even if you're going to donate all of it?
So
that's coming to your possession before you can donate
there's some interesting things there. First of all, the IRS actually limits the percentage of your income you can give to charitable donations.
That's right.
So I think it's 60, although there was some like COVID change on that for a while. But I think it's back to like no more than 60%. And then you have to try to carry it over to future years.
Yep.
Also, they do a withholding from your lottery winnings. So if you, let's say it was the $1 billion, not the smaller amount. So the federal government take out 37, the state of North Carolina takes out 475. You can't give away
Any of that.
what the federal government has taken out. So 40% of it isn't even available to donate. You just have to wait for your refund on your tax rate. So that means at least that amount that becomes yours on your refund would
Then
have
you
to
could
be
go to
taxed.
that. Wow.
It's their system. And, you know, like nothing else, the government gets their money first.
Oh, sure.
Like before you cut it out, I think the feds reduce it somewhat. They only take like 25% instead of the top rate is 37% or whatever else. But yeah, and I suspect that whoever wins this in California gets their own IRS agent now that we have 87,000 additional ones to go up. I'm sure that it's a dollar cost average just to send one or two of them to meet with them and follow them around for a while.
Back to the government gets their money first and its $3 billion overage in the state of North Carolina. Perfect world for Ralph Hise. Where would you like to see that go? What's your ideas? Or can you if you can share that, obviously.
My first goal as a legislature is that we need to continue the path of reducing the tax rate on North Carolinians. I think it's a mistake to do this whole cut a check back or those kind of things because of the inflation you create and those kind of things. Maybe if it's sudden or unexpected or those kind of things. But I think we've got to continue to reduce taxes in North Carolina. I think we've got to stay competitive. There are some local projects that I think are important. We've talked about the water and sewer in Spruce Pine that's coming in. I've had a lot of conversations with the high school about a need for another gym facility that's coming in that would be built there. Even to smaller things like our Habitat for Humanities trying to, maintain their building. That wouldn't be a big interest for the state or whatever else. But I've got other counties that need water and sewer connections. I've got other things that, need to be built. I'm trying to finish the sheriff's department in Yancey County. This was coming in. I was able to get that for both of them last year, but Yancey wasn't able to renovate a building. They're having to build one brand new. So that was.
Are they moving the jail over there too as part of that?
No, not as I understand at this point. This will be the sheriff's department as well as dispatch and all those are kind of coming in together. And they're in some bad facilities.
Oh,
Don't
man,
get me
they've
wrong.
been worn out for years.
If you ever go into the dispatch area in Yancey County,
it's rough.
When COVID, they put shower curtains between everybody because that was the only way they could still operate in that facility. And there's 6 inches drops in the floor when you walk through from where one that's covered is. So there's a lot of needs like that. I've got other communities, Appalachian State's now in my district. That's coming in. So and Boone's there, and they're working on the Hickory campus. So they're trying to open a new campus in Hickory this fall. Trying to make sure to get some startup funds available for them to be able to do that.
That's a smart move, actually, because Boone's outgrown its infrastructure.
Oh, man.
So if they could bleed some of those students down there to Hickory, would help them a great deal.
And here is Spruce Pine as well, completing the YMCA.
Yeah, I'd love to see that happen.
That's what's coming in. That has been one of my priorities. Partnered with Avery a few years ago to get it done. Pine Bridge was that, you grew up here. I put on the ice skates and I went down and those kind of things. And I probably put 100.
How real do you feel like the YMCA is? How real, percentage-wise? 50-50, or is it higher than that?
If I can get if we have a state budget, I'm confident it'll be there.
That's good to hear. That's
That's what coming in. That's a split project with the community college and the Y. And the wall became a problem after we got some funding for it.
It's a big wall.
Yeah, it is.
That is a big, and it holds back a lot of dirt.
Yeah, but you know what? You go out and talk to seniors and others. The need for that water aerobics pool is huge.
Well, especially with our whole. We talked about this whole thing. Like the young folks aren't here. There's more people, I guess, our age and up.
Yeah. But the ability they could fill that class, whatever else, but the mobility and other things, the rehab that could be done in a facility like that. And we did a community survey. It was the number one issue that came up on the community survey. And so that's been a focus of trying to get that finished. The hardest thing I've tried to find is road money for Bakersville.
Yeah, they need a lot of it.
Yeah, and
They
generally
really do.
municipalities get POW bill money, which I think is tens of thousands of dollars to Bakersville, so not a big, and their road system needs millions
Yeah.
to improve their roads. But transportation money is a separate budget. We finally
separate.
got the General Assembly out of naming projects onto a full formula and system. And so it's really hard to try to break that to get back for a small
Right.
need of a community when that's not how we fund roads
Right.
now. And there used to be all kinds of options for, well, Bakersville could turn this road over to the state and they'd do all this work and then they'd give it back to Bakersville and those kind of things. But the systems have cut that out because of abuses.
Sure.
That's what coming in. So I've been working on that for a couple of years. That's been the hardest kind
Right.
of, that's right, regardless of what you suddenly have in surplus, like the transportation is taken up by its formula and not necessarily by members of the General Assembly naming projects.
Which is probably a good thing overall.
Yeah.
Makes it a little more difficult, but I mean, it puts nepotism out of it, I
Right.
guess.
Sort of. There's still a challenge with your division engineer controls all the data and all the scores and what's the priority of the state and how it gets weighted into the system. But it's much better than, fortunately I've been able to move up into leadership and those kind of things. But before that, it's been a long time since Western North Carolina had anybody in leadership.
Sure.
And
And
Liston Ramsey might have been the last.
Right. I wanted to ask you about that. I used to track this a lot back in the day. There was a guy in Asheville that really, Matt Matan. You remember Matt?
Yeah,
Matt
very
Matan?
well.
Yeah. I used to listen to his show all the time, and he was a big hawk on this. And one of the biggest issues back then was that basically all your funding went down east. We were essentially the redheaded stepchild to the point where they tried to start a campaign to make Western North Carolina its own state. There was,
Oh wow! I
yeah,
had no.
I still from time to time put WNC on my when I send a
Really?
when I send a
That's
check.
funny.
So,
Wow.
Yeah,
David,
is that still that way?
So it's improved. Yes, there's still a lot there. Mark Bass Knight's not in control anymore. And so everything.
Thank God.
But when they distribute sales tax revenue, they still add 40% to Dares counties before it gets its money plus 40%. And so it's just never been able to change that kind of distribution and formula. It's shifting to more an urban rural kind of fight than it is an eastern western kind of fight. So it's becoming more
Sure.
the desert areas in the east and the desert areas in the west, but that little arc from Charlotte to Wilmington is
Right.
the one there all the money's flowing. But it's still the disparity still exists
Right.
in those kind of fundings. But we're making some headway in changing that, and the school funding formulas and those kind of things have made a dent into that.
So remind me. So what all committees and stuff are you on? Because I know you're a pretty powerful guy, supposedly.
At the start of session, I was elected to my third term as Deputy President Pro Tem of the Senate. President Pro Tem Phil Berger is the one that assigns all committees, does all that. I preside some over the Senate session when the Lieutenant Governor or Phil's not there. Do those kind of things. That position also makes me a member of every committee in the General Assembly. Voting member of every committee. I also chair elections and redistricting. So means I get sued a lot.
Right.
That's what's coming in every time.
fun.
Every time a new map comes in, I've had 3 cases now I've been involved with in front of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Wow.
So that's definitely a lot to deal, including and many more in the state Supreme Court or the Fourth Circuit Court. And I'm an appropriations chair, which means there are 3 appropriations chairs in the Senate who construct the development of the budget. Now we work with subcommittees and those kind of things, but there are 3 in the Senate who write the budget, and those are the appropriation chairs.
Okay.
Those are the 2 big chair, and then I'm a member on every other committee.
Right.
And importantly for membership separately and by position, I remember the Rules Committee, which is a committee that sees every bill. So
okay.
every bill first goes to Rules, is assigned to another committee. When they pass all their committees, it comes back to Rules and has to pass Rules in order to go to the floor. So in those kind of contexts, I get to see every bill that comes through. General Assembly is interesting. I tell people that for every bill that goes through, there are probably 5 people in each chamber who can kill any bill. Like, unless they just totally get overrode by their caucus, they can make a bill go away. There is no one in the General Assembly who can make a bill happen. That's what's coming in. So even if you talk to the Speaker of the House and the Pro Tem, and they are in 100% agreement on running this bill through, it's still 50-50. That's what covered in as to whether that bill is going to make it through. So we in a session will file in the Senate 1,000 bills, in the House 2,000 bills, and in the end of the day we'll pass 100 into law.
Wow.
So there's a lot of good ideas, and almost, as a matter of fact, I've never seen one yet go down to a no vote. I take that back. There may have been 1 or 2 for some political reason, but it just doesn't come up.
So in other words, it doesn't go to the floor unless it knows that it had. Everybody knows that it has the support to pass.
Our rules chairman's in charge of that, but I pity the foolish legislature who sent his bill to the floor without knowing the votes.
Right. Sure.
I mean, you can imagine that's probably not a wise thing to do.
Right.
Like, even though we'll sit there and we had, like, on one of the abortion bills, the Democrats took, 4 or 5 hours just to try to filibuster the whole thing and whatever else. But it didn't change a single vote. Like, when the vote went, we knew we had 30, they had 20, and people slapped their gums together for a lot of press attention and those kind of things.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we knew what the votes were before we started.
So, a moment ago, I asked our chat if they had any questions for you. Would you be willing to entertain a question from our chat group? So, someone in the chat, they ask, speaking of education and school choice, has the Opportunity Scholarship criteria been updated yet? And if not, when will that take effect? I'm not sure what they're talking about. So.
Okay. So the Opportunity Scholarship is something we started a few years ago to give individuals who were attending private schools a scholarship to attend a private school.
Okay.
There were some requirements. You had to be in public school first. If you left, we spend about, depending on how you calculate, there's $9,000 to $12,000 a student in public school. If they went to a private school, I think the scholarship was closer to $5,000.
Okay.
So it's actually a net savings to the state when someone comes through. And that program has grown in popularity year after year after year.
Sure.
We propose this year to eliminate the requirement to have previously been in public school.
Okay.
And to, instead of having an income limit to say that if you made more than $75,000, your family wasn't eligible, then we said there's no income limits, but we will reduce the amount of the scholarship as incomes go up.
Gotcha.
So we're getting rid of that kind of high end. Had a girl that attended Bethel that had never needed a scholarship, lost a parent tragically.
Oh, wow.
That's what coming in. And now they're ineligible for the scholarship because they had previously attended the private school, not previously gone to the public school. And we're really told the only way they qualify would be to leave your school, go back to the public school for a year,
and then
you'd be eligible to come back to your school.
Wow.
And the thing, so that's where we've eliminated that. That entire proposal is in the budget and is part of that discussions. It's not resolved yet. But I'm not hearing the controversy around it from any of the Republicans that would be part of the vote. Democrats are very opposed to any expansion of that, except for there are some, among the Democrats, there are a few school choice advocates.
Okay.
that's coming in. So it's very hard in Western North Carolina because we struggle to have a really solid private school, and we just don't have the numbers to make a charter school work.
No.
Right.
That's what coming in. You need to be at 700 students, and I don't have a county except maybe Watauga that could handle pulling 700 students out and putting them in a separate system. And so this allows parents at Bethel or at here to be able to have an option for school, because the number one thing I believe about education is there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all system.
For sure.
Absolutely. Amen, brother.
There's not.
I love Mitchell County schools, and I say that not from whatever else. I choose to send my sons to Mitchell County schools, and they're successful in Mitchell County schools.
Yeah.
But that's not everyone's story.
Sure. Right.
That's where coming in, and the smaller community you're in, the more personal conflicts and others can be a hindrance to someone's education, and giving them a choice to go to a different environment may be a better fit for them. And the state has a constitutional obligation for a free basic public education for everyone. And when the system doesn't fit, we need alternatives to find a system that does fit.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, great answer. All right, sticking on the education. Another question. It's been said that you voted down teacher raises. Ralph, why do you hate teachers so much?
Yeah.
You know, not like I grew up with one, but
Right. Who would say that? Like,
well,
I'm sorry.
First of all, I would say there's a factual problem with that. I've never voted against a teacher raise in the 13 years I've been there. Every proposal I've had is an increase in teacher salary from the system. We did make some changes to the teacher salary. One of the problems with the teacher salary scale, we're struggling to recruit people into the teaching profession. You don't recruit a lot of 25-year teachers into the teaching profession. Your starting salary was closer to about $20,000 when I started 4 years ago here in Mitchell County. A starting teacher in Mitchell County this year, assuming the budget passes, will probably make $46,000 or $47,000.
Wow.
That's the change we've made in 12 years.
Do you have an idea how many educators, teachers there are in public school in North Carolina, ballpark?
It is about 90,000.
Okay.
That's what coming in. Now, what we've done over the years is we have reduced the gap between a starting teacher and a 30-year teacher.
So,
Teaching was also, those salaries never went down, but they did not go up at the level that starting teaching salary went up. That's what coming in. Teaching was also one of the only professions that I think anyone could find that it took 30 years to get to the top earning potential in your career.
Right.
So
wow.
I will tell you, as a resident of North Carolina who's just one person speaking, of that $3 billion, you got to take $1 billion of that and give every teacher and law enforcement officer in North Carolina a $5,000 a year raise. Just saying. That's just how I feel about it.
The only challenge with that, and I said this is the big budget challenge we have, the $3 billion is a over collection on this year,
Sure.
so it's a non-recurring fund.
That's right. It's not going to happen again next year. So
Right.
you're not going to have that. You'd have to rebuild those funds if you did that in like that kind of a format. Now you've got that excess next year. Like I said, it's best used for projects,
Right.
which is so interesting that the state likes the idea of non-recurring costs like schools and things like that, but you're moving to a services model as a business. But that's not uncommon. I mean, if you take big companies, Apple, for instance, they were a product consumer company and now services the majority, or is becoming a majority of their revenue.
Right. And
My business is doing that.
right. And the things you can actually buy are getting more and more limited.
Sure.
The things you now subscribe to for $19.95
Never
a month,
stops.
That's what coming in. I mean,
Endless.
there's a subscription service for a toothbrush.
Yeah.
That's what coming in. Not I go to the store and buy a toothbrush, but if I get Quip, I sign up
Yeah,
so much a
send your
month
ass.
and it sends me a replacement head every so many. The subscription model is, and that's why I talk about in the tax system, it's becoming important for us to match that.
Sure.
as our economy
Even
represents.
Volvo's going to a subscription service for automobiles.
Yeah, dude. A lot of BMW.
And I'll tell you, the Volvo one's good because it includes insurance.
Oh, that's cool.
Your insurance is included in that.
See, I
so
like
$650 a month, you get a car, new car, and in 3 years you get another new car.
Wow.
And your insurance is included in that.
So let me tell you how BMW is doing this. Their subscription service is features. Like
Dude,
your heated seats.
I get
It is
so angry
awful.
at that because BMW, you buy a car that has heated seats built in, but you can't use them unless you pay a monthly subscription.
Yeah.
I would burn those
What?
cars down.
Yeah.
No, that's for real.
That's for real. Yeah.
Oh,
heated
dang.
seats. Like the cars will be fully capable of all the luxury bells and whistles, but you have to pay for them. So if you want heated seats or cooled seats, that may be a different subscription for cooled seats you have to pay for. Maybe that's the next level.
You know
up.
what, Josh? You only need heated seats for 3 or 4 months of the year. So why should we give it to you all the time? GM's taking Apple and CarPlay and Android Auto out of all their automobiles.
What?
Yes, moving forward, manufacturing they're not going to support CarPlay and Android Auto in any GM vehicle.
Why?
They've got to make a better entertainment system.
Oh my god.
Anyway, I got distracted.
No,
there,
I'd
so-
say.
Sorry, I guess.
But I mean, that's indicative
Subscriptions,
of
everything, yeah.
where the economy is going.
Well,
Marijuana subscription service.
I'm sure it exists.
I'm sure it does.
but I do want to address the other one you missed, and that's law enforcement.
Yep.
And particularly our state troopers.
You know, it's near and dear to my heart.
We are struggling right now. We've worked and they've got a class that they're going to offer for new state troopers in Western North Carolina and Black Mountain. Still only pulling 20 some students so far going into that. Like every business and industry that I talk to right now cannot find a workforce.
Yeah.
So, and state government's no different. But Tennessee just hit a 40% raise almost on state troopers. Starting salary for a state trooper in Tennessee is almost $90,000 a year without a state income tax. And so trying to compete with that within a year, we're trying to do some really large raises up front for the state troopers just to kind of keep that competitive. And it's not like Mitchell County Sheriff's Department's paying anywhere near that, but Mecklenburg County's is. That's what's coming in.
So the state troopers, will that if that raise happens, will it help for these vested troopers that are still getting their pay income, like they're still paid? I might know a guy, just saying.
Well,
Just asking for a friend.
it is unusual to say that state government gives raises to people who don't work for it anymore.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
But it is a pressure every year for an increase for retirees, even though that's not how we built the system.
No.
Right.
That's what's coming in. So it's not that it's not helpful or useful. It's just no one I've ever met with any business background experience came to state government and said, our former employees need a raise.
Right.
No, I get it.
Right.
You know,
That
I
is not-
understand.
But I do understand what retirees did for this state and others. And I would 100% tell you we should have built our retirement system
To accommodate.
accommodate that.
cost of living increases as the feds did in their system. But I'm also one that says we shouldn't have a pension system to begin with, because there's also the people out there who work 30 years for the state, pass away after a year.
Yeah.
That's what coming in, and thank you to the state for your 30 years of contributions. We've met our obligation. And the other thing I'd say about the pension system, it does not build wealth that passes from generation to generation.
That is true.
Yeah.
That's what coming
It just-
in. Like you work your entire life, and
Just to
yes,
sustain
there's
life.
some revenue to keep you in your retirement years, but nothing in that system, unlike
Hands
a
down.
401k or a match or anything else, helps you build something that passes generation to generation.
You know, I understand the law enforcement challenge with labor. I mean, I just tell you, when I was young and Dad's like, are you going to follow my footsteps and be law enforcement? I was like, well, first, I didn't have his size. That's one thing at that time in my life. But I was like, you get paid how much to do what you do, to have people spit in your face and shoot you and stab you and all that stuff? I'm like, yeah, not for me, you know. And I guess it's then I that was in the 80s and 90s. Dad and I have that conversation. I can only imagine now where somebody's going to tell you your job is to enforce rules on people who don't want rules enforced on them. Matter of fact, you're going to have to wear a camera 24/7 with everything you do. You're going to be GPS tracked, recorded, everything you do. I'm going to tell you right now, if something followed me around all the time with the camera, I'm going to do something wrong at some point.
Everyone does.
Except for a lot of law enforcement I talk to right now wouldn't do their job if they didn't have a camera on.
Well, I get that. No,
That's coming in
because it covers their ass. I mean,
right,
no, it really supports the truth.
The question of who do they believe is becoming a problem for law enforcement, and the fact that they need a video evidence
Sure.
to show where it's going. But those kind of shortages, and I know we have them at state troopers, and we're trying to address that, but we've got both prisons here that are having vacancies to the point they're struggling to operate.
Yeah.
And I talked to guards who have
That gets
been
scary.
in a unit with 40 inmates with no backup. That's what coming in. They're locked in a unit with 40 inmates with no backup.
What could go wrong?
A guy up in the, up in the cage watching them. That's what coming in. Lock that door.
Yeah.
That's what coming in because they don't have enough people to put on the shifts. We have new guards coming in that are getting their pepper spray for their certification on the same day they're working their first shift because they need them so bad.
Wow.
That's what coming in. State nurses. Right now, the report I got from Health and Human Services, we have a 60% vacancy rate in state nurses.
60.
Yes. That's what coming in. And then some other things like CNAs is one of those things that there's no workforce to keep up with. And when you took two areas that were state funded, they weren't state positions, but CNAs at like medical facilities, those kind of things, and early childhood workers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's another big one.
Pre-pandemic, you had this gap. Minimum wage was $7.25. Most people in fast food, whatever else, could get up to 10. CNAs, early childhood workers, were at 13, 14. All of a sudden, when this hit, fast food hit the 13, 14 range.
Now the CNA's at 18.
And then they don't have a reimbursement model that supports that for the rates, so they held as much as they could for those services. And so now you can imagine what your job applicant pool looks like and how you try to keep someone working in those positions when they can go to generic fast food restaurant and make more money. Like, it came on quicker, and only private business, which happens to be fast food and others, retail, could respond at that rate. That the state's got to wait another year or two for a budget to pass and whatever else, and it devastated the workforce. And the other problem we have, I said, with government, that this whole workforce is the individuals who were over 62 when the pandemic hit. So we did a study to estimate how many of those took Social Security earlier than they otherwise would have.
Just like the early retirement.
Just because it was like, we can't be.
I'm 62. They're going to make me wear a mask at work. They're going to make me do all these other kind of things. I'm done. I'm going to draw my Social Security, and I'm just going to go ahead and retire. In North Carolina, that's about 350,000 individuals who took Social Security earlier.
350,000.
Yes. And they really look at. So what's happened is now they would be penalized for coming back into the workforce because of the earning ceiling on Social Security when they have to start paying it back. Sheesh. So they may have started pulling their pensions or other thing at the same time. So a lot of people who at 62, 63 would have worked into their 70s, left the workforce and aren't coming back. Those jobs as greeters and whatever else may have been filled by other age groups. That's what coming in, but that's why that disappearance is part of why we don't have a workforce to fill the jobs.
That is shocking. 350,000 people in a state like that. That's a lot of people.
That's more than one or two.
Yeah, and that's out of a state of, 11 million?
Right.
Now, the only, a consideration is that's not just North Carolina's problem.
Right.
Oh, no. That's nationwide.
That's nationwide.
Sure.
And it doesn't indicate, too, is this somebody at 62 that would have retired at 63 or whatever else. But I'm just saying, when they estimate when people would have taken it, they took it significantly earlier or applied for it during the pandemic time period. That's kind of a permanent decision.
Right.
And so there's a lot of that in the workforce. There's a training problem. We send too many to 4-year degrees and not enough to trade systems and those kind of things. So,
So one other thing, I'm sorry, just switching gears a little bit. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, and I know, me and you have talked several times before. I know especially when you kind of first got in, you were like a hawk about waste and stuff. How much waste do we have? Like, cause I know you had told me that you found people that were being paid by the state that didn't actually exist, that were just.
So I felt like pre-pandemic, not that we'd eliminated everything, but we'd gotten to a much better position. But now we're seeing in the pandemic, the number of state employees that are still at work from home is huge. And compared to most industries have gone back to work.
Yeah, they have.
That's what's coming in. Right. And some of them are looking for it to be permanent in IT and those kind of things. But a lot of the state office jobs we have
you need to have bodies in a seat.
Right. We have vacancies, and we have an agency who, we were doing a head count for space utilization, and they're trying to force all their people to come back in on the days we're counting so they look like they're utilizing all their space. All those kind of things are going on within government. Some people have as much as 50% of their workforce still not back in the office.
Sheesh.
That's what coming in, and you add to that vacancies that are occurred. That whole kind of waste thing built back into that system.
Gotcha.
Wow.
At least when McCrory came on, and the story I was telling about, it took them 3.5 months to find an employee to fire them that worked for the Department of Health and Human Services. They've been on payroll. They don't know for how long that they hadn't been working, but no one had seen them in a significant time period. It took them 3 months to find the person to fire them.
Wow.
That's what coming in. Pat McCrory used to tell that story all over the state when
Wow.
travel. But now there's this concept of, if the person is working from home, what is the value of their work? Some do that pretty well and some don't.
Yeah,
Right.
and I would tell you, in business, that's become really the thing. You have to have very clear KPIs. You have to have things you can measure. You have to measure it, and you have to be very aggressive with, here's your output, this is where you're at, and if you don't meet that criteria, you're gone. And then that ties to, can this part of your job or position, whatever it is, be done from home? If that answer is yes, now businesses are asking themselves, well, do we even need that job? That's the real question that businesses are asking now, which I think is a vital question to ask.
Yeah.
Because you start realizing, well, this person's at home, but they're only giving us 30% output. This person's in the office, and they're giving us 50% production. Let's just give them 30% more to them, give them a bump, and we got a cost reduction over here from what we save from this person.
But the real challenge for state government is, how do you quantify service?
Yeah,
Like,
I can see that.
Most of the employees in state government are in service roles.
Mm-hmm.
They're providing a service to the public, those kind of things. It's harder to quantify than outputs.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Like, how
for
many
sure.
widgets did you produce, or
It
whatever
absolutely is.
in the program did you do, or even if you're providing IT support for, one of the departments, Health and Human Services, like, if their system's running and you're not doing anything, is that a bad thing?
Mm-hmm.
You're there when
Sure.
when it does. But so it's harder to quantify in that what's going on right now in the workforce, but there's a lot that is kind of efficiencies and those kind of things that are coming through. And the other inefficiency that's coming in is that, like, when Health and Human Services has a 60% vacancy in nursing, that becomes a pool of free money for the department. So there's things they're supposed to do with it. Like when somebody leaves and they have 10 weeks of vacation pay and those kind of things, like, you pay it out of the reserve salary, you're not paying them. When you have, like with the prisons, when people need to get overtime, that's what coming in, because you have a shortage, you pay overtime out of the lapsed salary money.
Right.
But it's a big number. And so trying to dig into how agencies are spending their
actually
money,
using the money.
and what they're using their money for is much more complicated when you have that. And then you've got reasons you can't eliminate even vacant positions because they tie to federal money and you've agreed to have a position.
You got to have a position to get the funding.
Right.
Yeah, no, that is complex.
And so
So you need to create a job to do nothing but audit. I'm sure these exist, but
Right.
you know.
So,
well, we have a state auditor, so that's
Yeah.
it's an elected position.
well, I wanted to ask this. I think about the nurses, the nursing positions. What about the people that were fired because they refused to take the jab?
So one thing about it is that in those positions, there may still be some in the hospitals and those kind of things, but there has never been a market in which people losing their job have had more options to fill those.
Right.
Right. So if somebody worked for Mission and they were a nurse, if you're a nurse and it take you more than a week to find a new job, then you slept for 6 days.
Right.
And I'm not knocking on what they're doing. That's the market that's out there right now.
Oh, absolutely.
And a lot of them went into travel. And matter of fact, I heard a system office from the community college with 2 years, I guess it was 2 years ago now. We've had this real difficulty trying to get instructors in nursing into the community college. That's 100% a pay thing. But starting RNs can now make $100,000 a year. I've talked to hospitals that are paying them that. The average nursing faculty is about 65. So let's recruit people to turn out classes of 20 a year where every graduate's making 50% more than what they're making.
You hear that, Jackie? Get that RN.
So
Stay on the path.
right. And now they're trying to force them to have master's degrees to teach. But we were really struggling until the hospital started threatening to fire nurses for not getting the jab. Community colleges didn't have that requirement. So at least for a 1 to 2 year reprieve,
you got somewhere.
we had a lot of
bunch
people
of,
come in
applying
who
for that
would,
position.
would apply to those positions. But, that's not going to last forever.
Right.
We have put things in place to prohibit those kind of requirements again and in the future and with the state. But for legal reasons, once they're in place, we had to let them run out. That's what covered in. But I think if another pandemic hit, and God forbid that we're in a similar situation, I think we have much better protections in the state to protect people from being required on those things.
That's good.
Well, I want to be mindful of your time. I know we're here for a minute.
I could talk for about another 2 hours.
We could talk for another 2 days. But
I'll be glad to come back at any time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's do this again because I've got 100 other things I'd love to pick your brain about.
Do we got time to do a quick vibe check with my questions with the one-word answers?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, Ralph, here's what we do. So sometimes I like to just throw out questions, and you can only give a one-word answer to the question. And we may or may come back and talk about it briefly, depending on if the answer sucks or not. Or if it's curious. Just kidding. So
Political trap, it sounds like.
yeah, exactly.
We're getting our sound bites.
I will tell you, it's not going to be. I'm not going to do anything ridiculous. I'm just curious where your head's at. So I'm going to start. The question is, and Josh, I'll start with you, and we're going to expand it because usually we talk about Mitchell County or Spruce Pine, but because Ralph's got a lot bigger audience, we're going to talk about Western North Carolina.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with Josh. What do you feel is the educational state of Western North Carolina as a whole?
Okay.
One word. Yeah.
Say the question one more time.
How would you define, or what is your feeling? You can either define it in motion, one word to describe your view of the educational state of Western North Carolina as a whole.
I want to ask for clarification.
Okay.
So are we talking
K through 12?
Okay, that was my question. K through 12?
K through 12. Yeah, I should clear that. K through 12 only.
K through 12. One word?
Or you can do two. Like if you have to
words?
say blank, blank, a couple words. No more than 3.
Needs improvement.
Ralph? 3 words max.
No, I go with Woodward. I would say a sanctuary.
Oh.
Okay. All right. I like that.
Chase?
improving.
Okay. Room to grow. Got a isolated, actually, I would argue here in Western North Carolina, you still have the freedom to learn just without a lot of outside influences. You can actually, we are isolated, which is cool. I like that answer. Okay.
I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, I do too.
I agree with that too.
I like that.
Yeah.
That was a very insightful answer. Okay. Chase, let's start with you with this one. Economic condition of Western North Carolina.
Changing.
Okay. Ralph?
Underperforming.
You and I think like exactly alike. Josh?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better.
Underperforming, I think that really kind of sums up Western North Carolina.
Yeah,
I'll agree with that.
I think that sums up the United States.
But there's some,
Honestly.
even throughout this conversation, though, there's so many factors that affect that. And things have changed so much, Even talking about, going to that subscription thing. The way business and industry is working all across America is changing at a rapid rate.
Right.
Like I feel like, and then now you throw this AI component in there, which is going to disrupt everything.
It's already starting to.
Yeah, it is. And all of it comes back.
I do have one question before we wrap up here. Going back to sports betting. Okay. I'm going to revisit that. Who do we bet on?
App State.
Agreed.
App State alum.
App State.
All right. Final vibe
Thanks
check
for
question.
indulging me there.
There are many people from Michigan and Texas A&M that would
Disagree with that. Final vibe check question, and we'll start with you, Ralph. The future of Western North Carolina. 3 words, 1 to 3 words to describe the future of Western North Carolina.
full of potential.
Beautiful.
I was going to say opportunity.
Josh?
Fun.
Okay. I'm going to weigh in on this one.
Okay.
Because I've thought about this one. Underperforming. So, but no, I'm just hopeful. I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
You hit on a couple of things that really, on a local level, we got to capitalize on this water thing, man.
Yeah, that got me to thinking there.
And I go back to that and I said the fortunate thing is our problem is distribution and not resources.
Yeah. 1,000%.
When it comes to water. Like when it comes to water, sewer, and everything else, and as I get to tell them in the General Assembly all the time, I'm uphill from everybody.
Yeah.
So we're not risking this somebody upstream from us or whatever else is going to pollute us or destroy our system or those kind of things. Like there are a lot of places in North Carolina that are approaching crisis levels in capacity. Mm-hmm. That's what's coming in. We haven't even begun to tap the capacity that's available. Underwater aquifers, dams, rivers. Like we pull one pipe on a slow rate out of the Tow River at times when we're not pulling out of Beaver Creek or we're not pulling out of those. Like the potential is there for water and sewer. We have the resource. It is a matter of like being able to distribute it better and not have our pipes break every time you turn around and those kind of things. It's aging. But I can promise you if I was starting a new system, I'd 100% want to start a new system here over anywhere else I can think of.
Fair.
So I think that's the good thing about it.
Yep.
So there are challenges, and it's old and expensive. Mm-hmm. And
is it fair to say that the real crux of that problem is just funding?
I think it is we build a system that could last 70, 80 years, and we never planned to replace the system over 80 years.
And that planning should have started at year 40. So if you had a 30 to 70, 80 year plan at year 40, you should have started, okay, guys, we got 40 years to get this put in. What's the plan?
But when somebody put in a water system in Spruce Pine, they never thought about what's my next water system.
No, they thought, what's their next job?
Right. And so because of that, we've now come to the end of the cycle on a lot of the products and others, and they need to be replaced and they need to be actually designed and those kind of things. But it's also, it happened over 80 years. And to think somebody solves it over 2 or 3,
Not going to happen.
Oh, that's
It's
ridiculous.
unrealistic.
there's no amount of money that makes that happen.
No.
Right. Gotcha.
And so, yes, it's a shortage of money, but if the town had $75 million, they could not fix their water and sewer problem in 2 years.
Wow.
That's what coming in. If they had the
It's
money,
almost like it's a challenging issue.
right.
But 5
Maybe
years.
with nuance.
Yeah.
But 5 years, they could make a big dent in
But
it.
if you start going over it, they could make major improvements over 5 years. They could make, in 10 years, we could be top of the line system. But you've got to start putting some funding in the system,
Now.
in the billing system that you're setting aside for capital replacement. That's a normal part of every business's tax filing. It's just not a part of government.
So here's a question for you, and I'm sorry, I know I don't want to go get back in the weeds, but what
Let's jump.
yeah, but I just want to ask this. And I noticed this from working on the church down there. You go in that back alley. Goodness gracious, what a gum! Like the electrical poles and all that stuff are. Do you, if it was you, if you were back in the mayorship and you were overseeing all this, would you make a plan to not only do the water and sewer system, but to get all that stuff underground? Would that be feasible to do it all in one plan?
There are so many moving parts in ownership and directions that having that kind of pointing at the town and saying the town is going to do all this, I don't know that it would ever be successful.
It'd be a 20-year project at a minimum.
But
Right.
it'd be starting with business owners and others. It could make funds available to them to start moving their systems underground, to start moving to burying
That's the
on
way to do
their
it.
properties, other than trying to say you could come up maybe under eminent domain or those kind of things with this plan for the town of Spruce Pine where we're just going to go in and dig up everything and rebuild it and replace it. Like, the town has a small surface area, and it takes a fraction of a penny off of every, $100 every year, whatever else, off every $10 every year for taxes. That amount of tax revenue is never going to be enough to replace everything that it's built
Right.
or the structure that it's in. So you've really got to come up with how do you incentivize that.
It would be easier to start a web funeral home towards the mines and where the old Brad Reagan is and build a new town there from scratch. And then when that's established, then go back and level and rebuild the old
Literally.
town.
Yeah.
I mean, Spruce Pine's had no parking since Spruce Pine was built.
Yep.
That's what coming in. It was built for people getting off the train,
Yep.
filling
Grab
the
some food,
downtowns,
and then
grabbing,
getting back on the
walking
train.
down, or you parked up where Philip Fry's lot was
Yeah.
if you had a vehicle and you
Yeah.
walked through town.
Right.
That's the way it goes. And until into the 90s and the 2000s, it had parking because no one was there.
Yep.
Town has come a long way from where it is,
For sure.
from the fire, from the whatever else, and businesses like
For
DT's
sure.
and others. Because at one point, McCall's was the only thing holding on down there, and if they went,
Yeah.
and it wasn't a viable business. It was a business that I have no overhead. I've owned the building for 10 years
Right.
and whatever else, and I can make my salary off of it. That's what operated.
It became
downtown.
hobby income,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
It really did. Because they didn't have operational overhead.
God, we could do this all night. All right,
I know. Alrighty.
Ralph, look forward to having you back again, my friend.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
No, it was fun. Good to reconnect. Great conversation. We're going to have to cut this up in pieces and have little specials on it to tease out to people because
for
there's
sure.
a lot of
Oh, yeah.
stuff to digest here.
Yeah.
Get Ryder on that. He's been doing some shorts for us. We'll get him on that.
Yeah, he's been
great.
doing a great job.
Yeah,
man.
he's been
They're
good. I just got to get him motivated to do more. I told him I'd pay him for every 10. I'm like,
Right?
yeah.
Right?
Hey, thank you, Ralph, for all of your efforts.
Yeah.
and everything
Thank
you've
you.
done. I know your role is often underappreciated, but a lot of us noticed how much money you've driven into this town. And
Yeah.
now I think some of us in this room are very aware of how much money could be available. Keep our eyes on that. And I think the main takeaway for me is local government, whoever it is, needs to get a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got to have a plan.
And it's, and in some ways, the execution, you look for opportunities.
Sure.
Butts are coming in, but you don't want to ever not be prepared for when an opportunity
That's right.
comes.
That's right.
Be prepared.
Great final words. Awesome.
Josh, take us out of here, my friend.
Alrighty, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. We have enjoyed such an amazing conversation, and I've learned a lot. My little silly interjections have been they've not added anything to the conversation, but I've had fun regardless. Ralph, thanks again for coming, man. We really appreciate it. Everybody, shop HollerCast.com. Use the promo code Holler to get 10% off of all your HollerCast merch. And we love you all. Until next time, peace out.
Peace.